Hello, my name is José-Carlos Mariátegui from Alta Tecnología Andina, and I have been researching and rescuing for several decades the audiovisual work of Rafael Hastings, a Peruvian artist who was extremely prolific during the 70s, possibly one of the most prolific artists, audiovisual artists in Latin America at that time. Hastings' audiovisual explorations began when he immigrated to Europe at the age of 17 to study art in Brussels. At that time, his interests were influenced by his friendship with three renowned figures: Maurice Béjart, the innovator of contemporary choreography, François Bellergan, writer and film director, and Jean-Luc Godard, director, screenwriter, and film critique. On his return to Peru in the early 70s, he became actively involved in various audiovisual productions, and in 1973, he established contact with Jorge Glusberg, the founder of the Center for Art and Communication in Buenos Aires, which promoted the internationalization of Latin American video art and distributed Hastings' works. During those years, he produced several works. We have been able to rescue 6, but at least 2 or 3 more are still missing. What I will do now is to introduce the unconditioned unconcealment for short films on the act of vanishing. This was an ambitious production which was created and directed by Rafael Hastings in 1974. The film revolves around death and invites the viewer to cross that path, stopping at uncertain stories about the transcendence of the human being. The film was based on research by Fernando Llosa Porras, a scholar of ancient American iconography and imaginary, who in particular was interested in studying the symbolism of the archaeological site of Sechin, which is located in northern Peru. Llosa Porras linked such worldview, such a traditional worldview from the pre-Hispanic site, with the primordial tradition, that is, the Eastern doctrines that are the product of revelation or inspiration, especially the Taoist and Vedanic ones. For almost 50 years, the films were considered lost until I found the original copies in the Spanish Cinematheque in 2021, leading to a careful film, sound, and image restoration. Key to the restoration was the diary of the short films, a notebook with technical details, notes, and watercolors that I'm showing here. It's a travel diary. It has many technical details, many of which were extracted from specialized magazines by Rafael Hastings. There are also shorts linked to some of the ideas he had in advance of the actual production, some photographies, some marks and references, but also some ideas of staging people, and also there are several watercolors around the landscape that were developed along the way. These were also connected with annotations, which in a way built what was after, or complement in a way, the film. And that also drove me into research for this film. The watercolors, they are also quite interesting because they look very similar to some of the images. And I would say that this film diary was fundamental, as I will show you in a moment, for the film restoration. As I mentioned before, I tried to identify the trails of these missing films and videos in different museums, institutions. Finally, we found them in the Spanish Cinematheque, and we were able to secure some funding from the Peruvian government, the Ministry of Culture, in order to do a proper restoration of the films in Spain. Um, it was done in a company specialized in film preservation and post-production called Subtili. Um, and there are many methods today around the color calibration that didn't exist 50 years ago. That was a big challenge. But we did quite a meticulous work with the professionals at the studio uh, for several weeks, and we used the film diary of Rafael Hastings, which contained these incredible watercolors and some paintings and some painted images to make reference to some of the sceneries that he shot. As you can see, it was the intention to try and get close to the rich and intense colors of the sea, of the Peruvian desert, the mountains. We tried to think on what Hastings would have done with the technological tools available to date, but without the intention of changing the actual film. It was an extremely delicate and patient job. Fortunately, the colorist we worked with, a French colorist, had lived in Peru, and he also understood the Peruvian landscape, its grayness, its cloudiness. Some of the images, particularly some of the images that had rich colors, were also carefully restored. And as you can see, the film was not affected. It was mostly a work on very careful colorization, works in contrast, in order to give the film back the values and the elements that were done during the shooting and the post-production 50 years ago. There are many subtle elements in the films that were carefully restored. For example, we realized that what had happened to this monolith is that there was some water that was poured in order to generate contrast, so we try to also maintain that contrast. And we took advantage of that to emphasize also that meticulous work on trying to show the iconography of the site of Sechin. The audiovisual work was complemented by a sound work led by Manongo Mujica. After 50 years, he produced the original sound, and he revised the material and made small but important improvements, as well as cleaning up the audio, which now expands with an expression and power that reverberates and adds certain instruments to that mix, in what I would say that amplifies the audiovisual work and making a powerful and expansive whole. So the sound creates this sort of spatial dimension that you will enjoy when you will watch the film. After having done the work, we realized also that it was necessary to give the structure. The films were found separately, so we work on defining the sequential structure into what is assembled as a sort of medium-length film, which is what Rafael Hastings originally conceived. And based on the indications and on several discussions with the widow of Rafael Hastings and the musician, we work on the structure of the 4 films in a sort of linear structure. Hastings, to finalize, is an artist that, in a way, has produced a film that it's a little bit unclassifiable. It has these elements of pre-Columbian history, millenary legends, and in this way, this work is extremely speculative and is a reassembled and disassembled historical idea, historical narration, a speculative narration, certainly a sort of fiction. Therefore, when we refer to this audiovisual restoration, we have to understand that it has not only been the work of identification, research, and digitalization, but also the subsequent careful work of post-production, which was guided by the notes left by Rafael Hastings. For more information, I will invite you to visit ATAT's website, where there is additional data about the works of Rafael Hastings and what we call the Rafael Hastings Film Project. Thank you.